talking about bad language has got me on this topic. I get into coaching, and there was times where early in my career, where I'd say a cuss word here and there. And I'll be honest, I can remember the last time I said one in my life, and I was on the football field out here. And it was in jest to David Gilmore. I remember the exact conversation. It's the last time I remember saying one. And I'm not saying that to boast. I'm just telling you that's one of my convictions from years back. It was something I thought, I don't need that because it's our testimony. You know, and I'm trying to be a Christian example, and if I'm doing that, what kind of example am I setting? And it's just one of those things that bother me, and that was none of part of this that I kind of took notes and what I want to share tonight, but I appreciate that information from you and kind of ties into me. But thinking about conviction is not always the bad things. Sometimes we're convicted to do what is right. I mean, we're convicted to do work for God. I mean, that's part of what we're being convicted about. And you have, as Mark said, we're called to serve, all of us. That's not a spiritual gift. That is what we're all called to do. You're supposed to be serving using your spiritual gifts. All right? So that is kind of where my life is. One of the things that I'm convicted about is being a servant leader. I want to be a leader who serves and makes being a servant more important than being a leader.
Amen.
And I feel like if I'm doing that, people kind of, I guess, will respect it. Just kind of like you said in your job, you know, when you hold yourself to a higher standard yourself. I mean, you're not trying to do it to make somebody else feel bad about who they are, but it tends to make people really, okay, I like kind of, we've all been around those people that are really, we can tell they're spiritually gifted. They're really close with God. It's kind of good to be around them. I mean, we get those good vibes. That's the kind of people we want to be around. I hope that you do, at least. I know that there's that part of you, all of us, that the temptation of the bad can be there too. So I kind of want to go back to how I got here, and this is my testimony side, just to share a little bit of my testimony. Growing up, in high school, I thought I was a pretty good student, and I wanted to be something business related. I wanted to go into marketing, or I wanted to get in stocks, and that was my thing. I was thinking I was going to make all this money or whatever. And I start off going to junior college, and I say that because I don't really have good direction. No one was really telling me, you need to do this, you need to do that. Like I've done my sons. They're like, yeah, that's a good idea. I mean, no, I had nobody pushing me and nobody telling me these are good jobs or whatever. My parents grew up just being hard workers. I mean, that's just, whatever job they could have that they worked hard. That's just kind of what they were. Instead of getting a degree and everything. I was going to go to college, but I didn't even know what that looked like because no one in my family had went to college. So it's all new to me. So I go to Union. Well, I went to a couple schools, several schools before it was all said and done. But I was at Union University, and I was a business marketing major. Semester went pretty good, but that was a super low point of my spiritual walk. But at the point where I realized I was lacking God. I grew up, as many of you know, at Church of Christ. I was baptized probably 10, 11, maybe 12. I don't even know what age I was. Very faithful. We didn't miss Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday nights, and every other thing that went on in between. Shannon seen me pull off a baseball field right in the middle of an inning. Time to go to church. And that's just the way it was. And I learned a lot of valuable things from those moments because it definitely made me who I am today. But my salvation experience, I never really had it. It wasn't real. And then I come across Shay, and I started seeing a true walk. And Shay you see today is a Shay from junior high. It's who she was, who she is. She's solid, always has been. And we dated for quite a few years, and it's just, we've broken up when I went to Union. And I was searching, I was looking in all the wrong places, I didn't know what, but I knew that my life was messed up. I mean, I was really struggling with life. My back got hurt in baseball. I gave up on baseball. I was really going through rehab and everything, but by the time the fall season was over, I was done. I was like, I'm just not gonna play anymore. I mean, I was 20-year-old and could not reach my foot to put my shoe on. I was having to try to slide it in. I couldn't. My back was hurt so bad. I'd had previous injuries in my hip and lower back that had affected those muscles, and they were really weak, and the tightness of my hamstring. It just caused all kinds of issues that I just didn't understand as a 20-year-old. I was getting tests done and everything else, and it's just one of those low points in my life. Toward the end of the semester, I'd already made my mind up. I was transferring. I was leaving Union, and my hopes were that I could rekindle this relationship with Shay that I had squandered when she went off to Wichita at that point, because she had just graduated. And we'd already dated for 2 years prior to this. So we, pretty close. But when we went two different directions, so did our hearts, really. And Shay started on a new path. I mean, Shay, like I said, was solid. She's not going to wait on me. She was serving God. And that's who she was worried about. And I was worried about what Shay was doing. And like I said, a low point. And I had some friends that just invited me, some baseball players were like, and see, I got stuck in the apartments over at Union are pretty cool how they were set up back then. They were like little apartments in a living room and a kitchen net in the middle. And some of y'all have been over there and you've seen it, but I got stuck with all these seniors. Some of them were fifth-year seniors, all of them were at least senior. Some been there 5 years, but they were the party group. Wild, wild, wild. So all I saw was these guys all the time. And Union has very strict rules. These guys broke them all the time. I mean, climbing the wall, the alarm goes off. They had, they locked the gates. They had all these rules at Union. I don't know if y'all are aware of that back in the day. You just couldn't just walk into a dorm room. They had a pretty tall brick wall, and if you went over the wall, the alarm would go off. I mean, it sounded alarm. I mean, it's the way it was. So these guys figured out that they could open the window on the upstairs rooms and shimmy down the wall without sounding the alarm, which is crazy. And they would go out and stay out, whatever. And it was one of those deals where you had to sneak in and out because otherwise you'd go to the gate. But I was so lost. I didn't know what. I didn't want to. I would go hang out with these guys, but then I felt like so out of place with these guys. And I got invited to go to a Bible study with some other baseball players. And I'm like, well, I didn't really know these baseball players through the whole fall season. Didn't know nothing about them. They just invited me out of the blue, almost like they knew or God had led them to me or led me to them, one or the other. But I started going to this Bible study. And there was a part of me, because I'm being totally transparent, that I thought, all right, I could tell Shay I went to this Bible study with these guys. And I was like, that's going to work out in my favor. It's one of those. We do our own thing we got to get the girl. I mean, that's the go at the time. That's what I was thinking. So it was had a big impact on me. I can remember where I sat in this dorm room. Probably the last 3 or 4 weeks of the semester, I went to the Bible study, and they have it once a week. And I can remember where I sat every time I went in there. I can picture it like today. It's just interesting. So fast forward to Christmas break, Shay comes home, and at that point, it's time to start courting again. And and me and Shay are hanging out. She was very guarded, which was rightly so. She knew things I had done and the places, I was at Union, and she actually came to visit me at Union, but toward the end of the semester, and but still very guarded. Just I could tell she was in a different place where I was. I was not in the same place spiritually as she was at that point. But I had decided I was going to transfer to Wichita, but I was going to sit out a semester. Her dad hired me at Life Stream. So I worked out there in the branch for a semester, made some money so I could transfer down to Wichita. We go to Wichita, and I'm still at this point a business major. And I start classes. Shay met a few people at Wichita while she was there for a whole school year. I come in, and I'm there for 1 week, and I've probably met 10 times the people she's met. I'm introducing her to people. Baseball team was just very popular. Everybody knew them. We were hanging out with everybody. It was a lot of fun. So she was starting to meet new people through me. And at that point, I started drifting away. Like, hey, I have all these fun guys to hang out with, and they're going to different events and stuff. And there's girls everywhere, you know. So I'm back to that place I was before, where I started screwing up again. I mean, I'm like, it's all about me instead of what I was needing to be doing. Luckily, I had a lot of good people around me at Washita. So now back to the degree part. I go to my first day of classes, and I had business calculus, and they gave us a pre-test, and he put that on my table in front of me, and I was like, And I didn't have a clue, because I didn't take calculus prior to that. I'd only had algebra 1, college algebra, yeah. So it was like, that was Greek for sure, and the professor said, and I was a transfer, so I was pretty far along in my classes, and it just wasn't these classes. And the professor said, if you don't know any of this on here, that's why I'm giving it to you, you're probably in the wrong place. I didn't even write my name on it. I handed it right back to him, and I was like, I'm going to be a coach. I'm going to be a PE teacher. And I went straight over to the PE building and changed my schedule, became a PE, and that started my path to be a PE teacher. And still, at this point, I'm thinking, I'm just going to be a lifetime coach. I love it. I love being around kids. I love kids. I love coaching. I love teaching. I love talking about it. It's just one of those passions I had. And no idea that someday I'd be an administrator. I had no desire to be an administrator. It wasn't part of my plan that I had for myself. But that's where God comes in. And at a point, let me back up a little bit. The semester that I set out and I was going to working ice cream, we had a Disciple Now here at the church. Shay brought a group in from Washita that did Disciple Now. I got saved at that Disciple Now. And my life started in a good direction. Now, there was some relapses through the process, but once I was at Washita for a year or two, a year and a half, me and Shay had, like I said, grown apart for part of that first year, come back together, and we got engaged. We were engaged for over a year, and then got married. So I come back here. We're excited. We're going to be coming back to Hayti. Everybody's like, why are you coming back to Hayti? I was like, we felt like that's where God called us. I mean, that's the truth. Every part of our being thought we're supposed to be here. We come here, life is super easy for us. People are so gracious to us. This church was good to us. The schools were good to us. I mean, everything went so well for us. And I don't really know why or the what. I just felt like we need to be doing more, or we don't need to be here. And you start believing the lies of where you're supposed to be. And after 1 year here, which is crazy, we just pack up and move to Conway. We had friends in Conway and Little Rock, and we decided we're just going to move down there. I'm going to go back and to get a degree in computer information systems, because I love computers. And I'm going to, I guess, work in a cubicle the rest of my life and probably hate it. But we go back, and I go to school for a short period there, and I was like, it ain't it. Shay's teaching in North Little Rock. And I get a job at Conway Regional Health Fitness Center, and I'm back to the sports side of things, and I'm helping train. I'm working the front desk at a workout place. It's part of the hospital. It's a really nice place, really neat place. I met a lot of really good Christian people there. We got involved in a church there, and they did a lot of stuff, and they had a lot of people our age, which made it even more tempting as far as a Christian standpoint, young adult, because it's what we didn't have here so much. There was only probably me and Shay in the church at our age, probably, if I remember correctly. Todd came a few years later, but there wasn't many of us that was my age in this church. So we were loving it there. But there was no job for me, and I needed to find something that paid a little more. We were on teacher salary, but I was making a whole lot less than that. So bigger aspirations. We get hooked up with Shay's older brother, Brett, and he lives in Dallas. And he's working at Liberty Mutual, working comp claims in the corporate office, and he gets me a job. All right, so I go down. I work for 2 weeks, sitting in a cubicle. About after the first week, I can remember this also. My brother-in-law lived he had a loft bedroom, 1-bedroom apartment. It was a loft, so there was an empty wall up there that you can hear everything downstairs. I'm sleeping downstairs on the floor because waiting on Shay to move down there because school year wasn't over yet. And so I already started my job, and I just was broken. Just felt like this is not what I'm called to do. I just feel like, and I feel like I was just so wishy-washy. I was just all over the place, just trying to, again, find my way. God had a plan for me. I just was fighting it, I guess. I mean, I just didn't know what I need to be doing. And I was like, this is not for me, Shay. This is not what I want to do. I don't think this is where we need to be. And everything was expensive, and we were just like, you saw that. I wasn't making much money at that point. It was more than I was making teaching, but still not a lot. And living in Dallas, I mean, at that point, I remember paying a $900 deposit on a 1-bedroom apartment. I mean, that was in '99. So, I mean, that's a lot when you're only making $35,000 a year. So she was like, well, what are we going to do? I was like, well, I'm calling Hayti. They got positions open. So I called Hayti. They were very nice to bring us back, allow us to come back here to work after we'd left for a year, and hired us. Still had no desire to do anything besides coach. I just love kids. I worked with the youth here. That was what we wanted to do. I loved it. And through that process, friends convincing me that I need to get into administration. And I was hesitant at first, but after I had spent several years as technology coordinator at our school district, being in the classroom, I had this desire to watch. I loved observing classrooms. I loved just working on a computer. I'm just taking it all in. I'm elementary classrooms, high school classrooms, it doesn't matter. I'm watching people teach. And that was just fascinating to me. I like to see different styles, I like to see how teachers taught, and learned so much through that process, and decided, all right, I'm gonna do this administration thing. And that's where I'm at. I'm in school administration, as many of you know, and all of you know, and God has put me to where I'm supposed to be. And I've had an opportunity to affect a lot of lives, and I hope that most of them have been positive. So that's kind of my testimony of jobs and how I got here. But God's called me, and my conviction is to be as I said earlier, a servant leader. And Ephesians 2:8-10 tells us, for you are saved by grace through faith, and this is not from yourselves. It is God's gift, not from works, so that no one can boast. For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared ahead of time for us to do. God has prepared a path for you, every one of us. He's got a path for you guys, and I know you're just like, I'm not trying to hear that. Got a path, and we try to have those conversations sometime, and they're not trying to hear that. They're in the moment. But trying to prepare. God has a path for us, and he has a work for us. We're here to serve him. Yeah. And so, which goes back to the one person I kind of based some of this around was Moses. Moses was going about his way, and I'm going to read some verses from Moses here, or from Exodus, and then from Numbers. I'm all over the place. It says, now Moses was pasturing the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the west to the west side of the wilderness, and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. The angel of the Lord appeared to him in a blazing fire from the midst of a bush. And he looked, and behold, the bush was burning with fire, yet the bush was not consumed. So Moses said, I must turn aside now and see this marvelous sight, why the bush is not burned up. When the Lord saw that he had turned aside to look, God called to him from the midst of the bush and said, Moses, Moses. And he said, here I am. Then he said, do not come near here. Remove your sandals from your feet, for the place on which you are standing is holy ground. He said also, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. Then Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God. Then the Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt, and have given heed to their cry because of their taskmasters. For I am aware of their sufferings. So I have come down to deliver them from the power of the Egyptians, and to bring them up from the land to a good and spacious land, to a land flowing with milk and honey, to the place of the Canaanite and the Hittite and and the Amorite, and the Perizzite, and the Hivite, and the Jebusite. Now behold, the cry of the sons of Israel has come to me. Furthermore, I have seen the oppression for which the Egyptians are oppressing them. Therefore come now, and I will send you to Pharaoh, so that you may bring my people, the sons of Israel, out of Egypt. But Moses said to God, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh, and that I should bring the sons of Israel out of Egypt? And he said, certainly I will be with you, and this shall be the sign to you that it is I who have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you shall worship God at this mountain. Then Moses said to God, behold, I am going to the sons of Israel, and I will say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you. Now they may say to me, what is his name? What shall I say to them? God said to Moses, I am who I am. And he said, thus you shall say to the sons of Israel, I am has sent me to you. God furthermore said to Moses, thus you shall say to the sons of Israel, the Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name forever, and this is my memorial to all generations. And then, so you can see there that God's calling Moses, just pasturing his flock, or out in his pasture with his flock, and then he gets called to deliver the people from Egypt. And then we're going to go to Numbers 12, 6 through 8. Let's see here. He said, hear now my words. If there's a prophet among you, I, the Lord, shall make myself known to him in a vision. I shall speak with him in a dream. Not so with my servant Moses. He is faithful in all my household. With him I speak mouth to mouth and openly, and not in dark sayings, and he beholds the form of the Lord. When then were you not afraid to speak against my servant, against Moses? And I say that because I wanted to give you the example of what he called Moses. He called Moses his servant, because we're all called to serve, and Moses was a servant leader. He did exactly what God called him to do, but he was very loving, caring to the Israelite people. There were so many times that they would just, and he was seeing all this. He saw how they just defied God at times, and he would still go and defend them no matter what. Even though they were doing wrong, he would, plead to God about, do what we need to do, but let's help me get these people on the right track. And which kind of leads me to, I wrote down a few things that I feel like are very important to be a good servant leader. The first one's integrity. And this is a foundation. This is actually the foundation characteristic, I believe. I believe that you should be a man of integrity. And I have a verse here, Proverbs 21:3. Forgot I had some more verses here. I already put the phone up for a second. Let's see. To do righteousness and justice is desired by the Lord more than sacrifice. So we have to be righteous. We have to do those things that God has called us to do. To be a servant, we can't cheat, lie, manipulate to get our way to the top, which is what the world tells you today. It tells you that we're supposed to cheat our way to the top. Any means necessary. Whoever we got to step on, whoever we got to walk over, that's not how you get to the top. It's not how I got to the top. I mean, God put me in the position I'm in to get to the job I have. I didn't try to take advantage of no one. I let that time be taken care of by God. And didn't try to rush it, didn't try to force it. Really didn't know that was the path I was going on. He opened the doors for me. I mean, and I think that's part of being faithful to what he has in store for you. The second one is humility, which is, I think, a very big one also. And I'm not going to lie, that's something I can struggle with. That's a tough one, especially, and I make this excuse, and it is partially the case, a competitor. And I think there's an edge of being really competitive, and I've come from a background of coaching and competing and trying to be at the best I can be all the time. And a lot of people know here I like to win. I mean, the good thing is I've learned to deal with it a little better. so you won't see it as bad as I used to. You might have seen it in the past. But sometimes if I know I'm not going to deal with it, so when y'all hear me say, I'm not playing those stupid games, I tell my wife that all the time. She's like, let's play board games. No, game. Because it just seems like the people that know that I'm like that, and they may not be like that, but they know that I'm like that, it feel like they just jabbing at me. They want me to compete. And then when I start competing, then they don't want that part of me because it's not pretty. It's just a little rough. So I try not to do that. But humility is extremely important. And I learned in my position, being around superintendents, there is not a lot of humility, unfortunately. I have watched a number of superintendents, and I can definitely count on my hand the number of superintendents I feel like in Southeast Missouri, I'd say, that are humble guys. I mean, there's a lot of arrogance, and it's actually kind of how I was taught, but in my mind, I'm thinking, that's not how I'm going to be. I don't want to be that. I don't want to act like I know everything. I don't want to talk down to people. I don't want to be that. That's not the kind of leader I want to be. Colossians 3:12. So, as those who have been chosen by God, holy and beloved, put on a heart of compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience, bearing one another and forgiving each other, whoever has a complaint against anyone. Just as the Lord forgave you, so also should you. And I think that's so important. Having that forgiving heart, I think that's something God has also blessed me with. I have a forgiving heart. And I tend to let things go and roll on. I've learned that it doesn't change much to hold grudges. As a matter of fact, the only person it affects is me. You know, it's just, you can sit there and let it eat you up inside, or you can move on. And I've found that it's one of those things that I've been blessed with. I don't get caught up in it too much. Going back to the idea of thinking that I know everything, and I've got this. One of the things I said right from the beginning, I may not know, but I'll find out. And I still say to the teachers today, and when they come and talk to me, and I don't act like I know everything. And I've told some of my elementary teachers, I've never taught in an elementary classroom. I've watched, never taught. So don't let me sit here and act like I know it better than you do. I don't. You are certified in this area. You worked in this area. You've done this. I can only suggest what I've seen. And that's always been my approach. I don't want to act like I know everything. I don't want to be that person. So being humble. And then the last thing is stewardship. And a lot of times we think about stewardship. We think about being good stewards of money or finances or valuables. But it's more than that. The most important thing we can be stewards of is being stewards of God's people.
Amen.
I think that these lives, these young people here, which has been my heart forever, I guess, for as far as, I guess, back to high school. Just love being around young people and being able to teach them and try to guide them. Because, I know there's so many conversations my parents had with me. There's so many conversations they didn't have with me, and I wish they would have. But it's things that I want to make sure I show my boys and the players I've had a chance to impact through the years. And it's a blessing when you have these are the big blessings in my life and I can think mostly about the guys I coached here at Hayti baseball or football. I'll tell some stories of those too, but when they call you and they want you to be in their wedding, what a blessing. That's another chill bump moment. I got to be in a couple of my players' weddings, or they call me when they get saved. It's big. That's one of those. And I've had a few of those. I've actually had several of them. Or when they have questions about God, they call me on those things. Those are just those impactful moments. And you think, when we were having those conversations on the baseball field, I just did not see it coming. They might bring it up. I can remember vivid conversations. And you know how high school guys can be. They're just jokingly cutting up, and they ask about God. And almost like I said, jokingly. But I guess maybe my responses are God's responses, or well, I don't even know what I said at those times, but I can remember the conversations, and then, 10 years later, they're talking about being saved. One of them being delivered to pieces, and just seeing lives change over the years, and having those conversations. And I have guys that see and they just like, oh, my favorite coach, and I'm not their favorite coach because I was a good coach. Probably because I was the only one probably not having to chew them out. So I got the easy side of that job. I was more pat them on the butt. Let's get back out there in football, at least. Now baseball I had to chew a little bit, but I've just been blessed by good relationships with a lot of kids, and I'm Facebook friends with a lot of them, and I get some really nice comments, and it's humbling. I mean, you just don't know whose lives you're touching, who's watching you every day. That's everybody in here. There's people watching you every day. There's somebody in your life what you say and do means something to them. And I learned that a long time ago. People watching me. And I can remember the bumps in the road that I had early in my career, just thinking I could change the world, and I was all about me and how I was going to do it. And it was all, and then realizing that's nothing about me. It's about God. It's how He changes me. And but that's just kind of what's been on my heart. That's probably a whole lot more than I actually have in these notes. You write things down and your heart goes, God takes you other places. But I just think it's very important. There's so many of us that are leaders, and some of you that will be leaders or started that process of growing and knowing these important factors of having integrity, being humble, and being stewards of God's people, and realizing whose people they are and what your job is. We're here to serve God. All of us. We're all here to serve God. Recognizing your spiritual gifts and letting God use you to do His work. But that's all I have, guys. I appreciate it. Sorry if it was really long. It was not my intention, but it is what it is.